As most of you know, I think, Stacey and I have been working the last couple of years with 4 direct lease. They're a leasing company based in a couple of countries in Europe, mainly Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. First, it's not a tech company, right? So they had an agency and their job's not building sites or tech or whatever. So first of all, we kind of convinced them like, okay, you cannot be an online business. They are an online business. If you don't have any tech people on your payroll. That was our idea. We stand by it, and they kind of bought it. So the last couple of years, we helped them set up a department, an online department, and clean up some stuff. So when we started like 6-7 years ago, they had a stack, 8 different sites, 3 agencies. They didn't know what to do. So basically infighting with every agency, not happy with it. Stacey and I being Silver Stripers, of course, we thought, well, we need to redo the thing. Cleaned up their stack, so we end up with 2 sites. We don't do sub-sites. We just have one code base, deployed into different countries. So you hit deployment, it does the build, and it just deploys to like 8 servers in different languages, fluent, their own data, their own people maintaining the sites. They have offices there. But we kind of went on an interesting voyage ourselves because we come from an agency side. So all you do is see nails, like we can code. So what you do usually is code your way out of stuff. But for this company, they do not want to become a tech company. We kind of took the red pill, and for us it's not about clean code anymore. That's what everyone wants, like reuse your code, keep it clean, document it. For us, the cleanest code is no code at all. So we really took a deep dive into SaaS. So our developers, we always ask like, okay, look at the libraries, look at, for example, we use Vue. What libraries are already in the project, reuse it, you know the drill. But we added a little addendum where like, we want you, before you start building stuff, make sure you can't buy it. So if you can buy it, don't build it. Which ended up in an interesting landscape of 40-ish SaaS tools, APIs. If we can buy it, we don't build it. If there's no code, there's no cost, there's no contracts, there's nothing. And you need a different kind of skill in the company. You don't want a bunch of developers sitting there, because developers they have the habit of multiplying themselves. That's what I see in practice. You start out with 2 years later you have 3, then you have 8, then you have 9, because coders will code. And this talk is basically on the adventures. We bumped into an interesting tool. I think it might be interesting for a lot of people here. When looking at the company, we could make the choice like, okay, we're only going to do the front end, right? So these are the sites, German, French, and Dutch. But you also have to deal with the internal processes, which is a mess. Every company, I think, is a mess. So you have 20,000 cars. On average, they drive like 3-4 years. So each year you get 4,000 or 5,000 cars back. Some of them you want to put in the marketplace again. Some of them you want to sell. So what happens is you get sales teams, and this is internal. Let me skip the names. Okay, this is anonymous. So what we do is like, okay, sales team, they have to deal with occasions, so second-hand vehicles coming back, resell them, just let them do their stuff basically in a sheet. Getting them off Excel was the first step, and then they started. You end up with stuff like this, right? Not a tech person, I don't know how many people have access to the sheet, I don't even want to know. These people are in there right now. I think there's 30 people working in this sheet. So after a couple of years, you see this is growing out of hand. It's like, what are we doing? So you end up looking at internal tooling. We needed some kind of process, some kind of little internal application. So the process for us was like, okay, of course you can build this. Take Laravel or even Silverstripe, whip something up, couple of grip fields, couple of models, stick it in the database. But it's always nasty, right? You need tables, you need the sorting, all the blah blah, user rights, profiles, who can do what. It always ends up being big, so we're like, no, put it off the side. I want to get my hands on the low-code stuff. So tools like Bubble, or I don't know if you're familiar with it. Then you play around with it, and always they stand in your way, kinda. So for developers, those are not the tools we like to work with, right? Enter Retool, which is a low-code tool made by developers for developers. So it's not one of those tools that says, like, okay, you can build this outwards-facing app, and you don't need to be a coder. No blah blah. You need to be a developer, and then this is a tool for you, and you can only build internal tools. So for the messy processes within your organization. We have this student, Stacy, discovered this tool. She played around with it a couple of evenings. She was like, wow, this is cool stuff. We need to do something with it. We have one student programmer. I was like, okay, this is the application. We kind of have it specced out a little bit. Basically, the project was called the sheet killer, right? That sheet needs to become an application, and the workflows were kind of clear. And I gave him the choice, like, okay, you can do it in Python, you can do it in whatever you like. But there's also this tool we think could be very cool for this job, but we haven't actually built something ourselves yet. So he decided to take the dive and dove into the tool and built this great little app. I can kind of, I don't know if I'm still logged in. Yeah, I am. This is basically what came out of the sheet, right? So there's a little workflow in here, some data. It's not that interesting. A car arrives, client hands in the car. We do the check-in, like what's the dents, what does the car look like? Is it good enough? You stick it into a system. But we also have some back-end system, right? You don't want to fill in all this car data by hand. We have a system. You enter the license plate. You do some lookup. A couple of REST APIs. So it's you could do it in a sheet. Of course, you could program it by hand. But this tool was super quick because their idea is you can, let's see if I can show it real quick. Not really familiar with the app. So their idea is basically you have data, right? You define a connector to a data. That could be a different SaaS app. It could also be a direct connection to a database. It could also be a REST API. You just tell it like, okay, this is the REST API, this is the service area of the thing, and the system will deal with the underlying calls. So it can eat JSON, it can eat XML, it can eat database connections, and it will basically take care of when it needs to do a call, when it needs to do a query, when it needs to do a lookup somewhere. You just define it once. From that moment on, you have this data set, which is a combination of multiple sources of data. And their trick is, you can whip up like fairly standard stuff like components. I can show that, I think. I hope, yeah. So you have your data tables, your widgets for the UI. It's just drag and drop. You tie your data in there. But their trick is they let you basically code JavaScript in everything. So if you wanna, you don't have to work around the system. They're like, okay, this is the component we offer you. There's a tie-in. Here's the API for the component in JavaScript. But you can also do data transformations way low down in the stack. So for example, if you do a lookup in system 1, which is MySQL, and you do lookup number 2 from a REST API somewhere, it just flattens it. It lets you transform it, like, okay, here's the raw data from number 1, there's the raw data from number 2. Combine them in a little piece of script, like you see here. I don't know what he's doing here, but looks like flipping some data around. This is probably more involved. Yeah. We started off with a sheet, so this is nasty. This is Dutch. It's just, I can't even explain. These are Silver's Drop IDs, right? So the thing spits out a CSV and it goes imported into a different system. But it was so quick. This guy is 20 years old, not even done with university, and he whipped up this application in, I don't know, 80 hours maybe, 85. He was done, and I asked him the question. I was like, okay, if you have to do this again, would you rather take your Django? He's a Django fan. Like, okay, fine. If you have to do it again, would you do it in Django? What was the experience like? And he's totally in love with it because you are developing. You can do everything. You can even import your own JavaScript libraries. The system's just not in your way, but it takes care of the sorting, the pagination, all the fiddly stuff we all have to deal with if you code something yourself. And it takes care of a lot of data, especially if you work with SaaS tools. It has connectivity to all the bigger systems, Zendesk, Salesforce, you name it, it has a connection. You don't have to do anything. It just provides you the JSON, do whatever you want with it, fill a table, stick some actions on there, and the thing underwater knows, like, okay, this is a query, it knows how to fetch and stick away the data. So retool, that was my talk basically. If you ever have to whip up something real quick for internal use, think of this tool. It's cheap. It's very developer focused. Like stuff like versioning is in there. You can spit out the entire thing to Git. It has user rights. It's just, I don't know. It's a joy. I've been playing around with his little application the last couple of weeks. Extended it a little bit. It's so fast, and we pay $10 a month per user. I mean, how many lines of code are we gonna produce for $10 per user a month, right? That's basically it. Retool.
Thank you, Lars. So, any questions?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Does it offer a self-hosted solution?
Yes.
Okay.
can.
And are the costs different?
Sorry?
Does it provide different subscription models?
Oh yeah, of course you're going to pay through the nose if you want to do it that way. No, it's of course they have this enterprise thing. If you want the Git stuff and if you want your entire workflow and you want to host on premise, $50 per user per month is their maximum. So it will never get super expensive, and they're not like childish on what is a user, right? So I asked them like, okay, I don't care who does what. Can we all use the same user at Direct Leads? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. So you can log in with 6 people under the same account.
I ask because of the privacy user regulation.
They don't store any data, so they don't offer data storage. So there's no GDPR, like, they don't offer any data storage, it's just the application. And wherever you store your data, you store your data. So they're agnostic on that, and they don't offer any storage.
Okay.
And it basically spits out a JavaScript application. That's basically what it does.
Cool. Anything else? Some more? All right. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you.
Really interesting.